We'd now like to move into the first session of the colloquium, titled A Tale Through Time, Navigating the Historical Antecedents of the Purported Sulu Arbitration. For that, ladies and gentlemen, would you join us in welcoming back onto the stage Dato' Sundra Raju, Director of the AIAC, to moderate the opening session. Joining him on stage are our esteemed panelists, Professor Madhya Dr. Bilchabala, Mr. Philip Golangai, Mr. Shari Jeffri, Professor Madhya Dr. Bilchabala is an Associate Professor of Sociopolitics and Cultural of the Malaysian Borneo, University Malaya and Sabah. Mr. Philip Golangai is a news editor at the Star Media Group. And Professor Dr. Amde Siddiq is the chairman of the Progressive Institute of Public Policy Analysis, Sabah. Mr. Shari Jeffri is a historical researcher. Ladies and gentlemen, please give a warm round of applause for our first session panelists. Thank you.
Good morning again. Thank you very much, Ezra, for putting us back on stage. We are going to start straight away. It's very interesting. I read O.M. Arif's thesis on the Sulu agreements and all these things. And then I suddenly realized it's like one of those Somerset Maugham tales where actually it all starts quite a long ago with some British and European adventurers coming over during the great colonial times and then claiming territory. So I welcome you all. The theme of this morning's this session will be a tale through time. That means we're going to actually examine the historical antecedents, navigating the historical antecedents of the purported Sulu arbitration. Now, I have a number of very distinguished and experts with me, outline who they are. First, Mr. Shari is currently the Vice President and Head of Auto Finance and Business Development. He's actually an amateur, and I won't say he's an amateur, he's quite an expert historical researcher, you know, because as I watched him first, I think in the first discussion that the Bar Council organized, and it was quite interesting. He says he does many things. I think he has actively engaged himself in many fronts, and he also collects coins. I mean, he's just interested in Sabah and its history, and he does all kinds of things related to it. I'm going to start the ball rolling by asking Mr. Shari Jeffri, who is going to do a historical outline, to actually take on the session.
Thank you very much. One thing interesting about this research is actually I compiled 300 years of documented evidence of documents of antiquity about not Borneo only. So all of you will be privileged to see through how we actually can go back into time in terms of documented evidence. This one I collected myself over a period of 20 years. And this is part of my hobby because I'm working on another book titled History of Sembulan. And when I did that research, I found out that I found another treaty dated 1898, which is in the same bundle of treaty dated 1878 and 1877, of which kept at National Archive in London. So I want to start with saying that in North Borneo, Sabah, we share 650 years of common history with Brunei, whether we like it or not. And this Sulu claim started with 1660 because of the civil war in Brunei, ended 1673. So we are talking about two important events here, which is 1673, which is the Chamin War, of which started the claim. And then, of course, another session agreement dated 1878. So there are missing pieces along the way, which is 1673 to 1878. So I would like to share what I did was actually very straightforward. From that documented evidence, I create a timeline that stretch back to 800 years. And this is based on documented evidence. The oldest document that I managed to secure is from Spain, dated 1500, which is before the 1660. And then during the Civil War also, I managed to find another document dated 1673, which is before the end of the Chamin War. So these 300 years of documented evidence is a first complete definition of the North Borneo treaties. For your information, I checked with the National Archive of London. As long as you wanted to know about North Borneo history, there is about 5,976 documents kept in London with million pages of documents. So what I'm trying to say here, there is a paradox in terms of there's a lot of document, but there's least share information to the general public or to the scholars. I would say North Borneo history was obscure when there is an intrusion of European power. Actually, this is about 176. I tried to skip to put my perspective. This is where I got all the sources of the information. It's not from one places. I sourced from National Archive. I sourced from Spain, Netherlands. I also went to Library of Congress in Washington to bring back all these documents. And this is some of the literature who compile documented evidence. I would say this is the few things that which is very important. This is a misconception about the 1878 treaty, because 1878 treaty is not the primary source, it's the only and primary source. We found so many other documents in the same bundle of 1878 treaty. We found 27 treaty dated 1847, dated 1877. A lot of people think that the 1877 treaty only one piece of document, but in actual fact, the 1877 treaty between Sultan of Brunei and Overbeck is actually 4 pieces of treaty plus another commission, whereas a few weeks later, dated 1878, which is a few weeks after the first treaty, 1877, there is another treaty signed with the Sulu, which is 1878, and subsequently there is a few other treaty dated 1903. So what I'm trying to say here is 1878 treaty cannot be used as the only primary source into looking into the Sulu claim, because we have so many other treaties, documented evidence that we can actually arrange so as that we can see the development of the claim. Secondly, there is no such thing as Brunei just give to Sulu in 1673 because they sent 300 people in a ship to help Brunei. Because if you were to look at books or references from Brunei or from Brunei scholars, they never handed over the sovereignty of North Borneo to Sulu. In actual fact, if you ask scholars from the Philippines, if you ask them when is the first time that they did the claim, it was mentioned 1658 and it was mentioned 1704, but there is no documented evidence saying that this actually proper handover of the sovereignty or of North Borneo. You see, based on Brunei narrative, they conquered North Borneo from 1400 over 21 times. That's how they acquired North Borneo, not the entire North Borneo. You see, another aspect that we need to look at. 1878 is not the only document. There is another document a few weeks before that, which is 1877, of which Sultan of Brunei ceded the same territory, even more territory compared to the Sulu, and the total amount paid is not just 5,000 Mexican dollar during the time to Sulu, but the total amount is actually 27,000 dollars. Another thing that I need to highlight here, which is very important, that both Brunei and Sulu both are maritime empire. They have central administration in Brunei, Kota Batu, and they have central administration in Holo. They do not, conquer the entire area. Their strength is actually by way of vassal, or they appoint viceroy, or they appoint datuk in terms of managing that area. And the loyalty of this datuk keep changing depending on the power of both feudal sultan. Another interesting fact that I want to share here also, that both Sultan of Brunei and both the Sultan of Sulu are actually related. They are royal marriages back in as early as 1400, and in 1600, the son of Sultan Hassan became Sultan Hassan of Brunei became the Sultan of Sulu. So in actual fact, the son of Sultan Hassan also became the Sultan of Brunei, meaning both brothers are taking care of two sultanates, you see. So for Sultan Hassan of Brunei perspective, if you want to get your people to stay at the east coast of North Borneo, it's okay because we are brothers, you see. And after, another consideration here is there's a war between Spain and Sulu for almost 300 years, and North Borneo is always a place for them to escape from the onslaught of the mighty Spain Empire. So that is in a nutshell what I'm trying to say here. There are multiple documents that need to be analyzed, need to be studied, and what I did was, if you look at it here, I arranged the document from 1500 to 1776. And all these documents are actually kept in National Archive in London. This is why I say the paradox, because the colonial officers kept a lot of documents, and we doesn't have the opportunity to study all these documents. So by way of having all these documents, we know precisely the sequence of events leading to 1660, 1673, and leading to 1878. Of course, later on from 1878 to 2023. So we are able to arrange the timeline. All right, this is the events that going on for the last 650 years. And it's not that I just don't want to touch 1878, because this stem from 1673. So That is about 350 years ago. Why don't we go back as far as document allow us to, to show? You see? So this is another timeline that I share based on the document evidence. And if you look at this infographic, from the documents that we compile, we actually can see the changes in terms of diplomatic, the policy, and in terms of the sovereignty changes from North Borneo. That's why you see North Borneo history is very colorful. We 660 years, 500 with Brunei. We have a history with North Borneo Chartered Company for 60 years. We have a history with Crown Colony for another 60 years. We have history with Overbeck then Association. We have history with American Trading Company. We have history with East India Company. So not mentioning Spain, Germany, and Netherlands. So you see, based on this documented evidence, we actually can do a proper timeline of our history. So again, Dato', I think suffice to say, I will stop at this timeline.
Thank you so much, Mr. Jeffrey. It's interesting that it is we are getting the primary sources. It suggests that it's quite murky. You can decide which agreement you want to choose, and each agreement will have its own story. So I think there is something that is quite clear now. Thank you so much, Jeffrey, for going to the primary sources to tell us there is actually other documents that can be looked at to suggest a similar claim. So why choose 1878?